This is the morning of the 1st of August, 2024. Article on Politico, written by Natalie Allison and Alex Isenstadt, Isenstadt, published on the 1st of August. Look at that photograph of Trump. Look at his neck. Look at his face. Look at his ear. Do you see any damage at all in that ear? I mean, seriously. That's reportedly the ear that was injured. Now, do you see any damage at all? I mean, at all, period. One of the videos that I put up this morning, the doctor in the hospital, they talked about having put stitches into his ear. Where? In his ass? Look at that ear. That bald spot on his head. That guy's a joke. Trump and his allies had a plan for how to hit Harris. Then he opened his mouth. How many times have I said his mouth's his worst enemy? He's grasping around, said Chuck Coughlin, an Arizona-based political strategist. Scrambling to put an end to camel-face on her knees ascent, Donald Trump's campaign and outside allies came up with a plan. Hit her on immigration. Her record as a liberal prosecutor and as a radical. It didn't last long. During a 34-minute question-answer appearance before the National Association of Black Journalists, Trump questioned Harris's black identity. He said he would pardon violent January 6 rioters, and he didn't directly answer when asked if his vice president pick, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, would be ready to assume the presidency. He didn't answer because he knows that he's not. The guy's a complete joke, J.D. Vance. Look at that photograph of Trump. He looks like absolute crap. The exchanges overshadowed the attacks his political operation has made against Harris in recent days, while Trump still seems to be searching for an effective message to damage her. They don't have a narrative that they're comfortable with about how to take down Harris, said Chuck Coughlin, an Arizona-based political strategist. He's grasping around. I think he's desperately grasping around with his instincts. I don't think his team has any way to put their handle on this, and so he's instinctively grasping around for what to say. The Trump machine had in recent days begun a multi-million-dollar TV advertising blitz, hammering Harris for her record on the border, an issue the former president's campaign sees as a winner, and portraying her as an ideological out of the mainstream. One ad from pro-Trump group labeled the vice president's a dangerous San Francisco liberal. Harris has even begun defending herself from the attacks, hitting back Tuesday night in Atlanta about her border record, and simultaneously releasing a nearly minute-long video framing her as pro-border security. How can they frame her pro-border security? I mean, that's a complete joke. But Trump's comments Wednesday at Harris' racial background drew some of the biggest gasps from the audience and provided Democrats with ammunition. During the appearance, Trump said, Harris happens to turn black. She was Indian all the way, and all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black woman. The White House immediately seized on the remarks, with White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre calling them repulsive and insulting. Jean-Pierre is a very, very strange individual, to say the least. A muff diver, a black, and a moron. After the panel interview, and despite the pushback, Trump and his campaign leaned into a messaging about Harris' racial identity. Before his rally Wednesday night in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the campaign flashed a graphic of Harris laughing with a screenshot of a news headline referring to as Indian American. His attorney, Alina Habba, appeared to intentionally mispronounce Harris's first name when she said, unlike you, Kamala, I know who your roots are. I knew where I come from. Harris knows where she comes from as well, but she's going to use everything that she can to get votes from blacks. Whether Trump's performance on Wednesday will ultimately impact his prospects in the race is not clear. The former president has a long history of making incendiary remarks, and some party strategists suspect it is a reflection on his impulse to draw attention to himself when he is not on him. Even when the resulting headlines are negative in recent days, much of the focus of the media has been on Harris and the controversy surrounding Vance, who has drawn scrutiny for his criticism of childless cat ladies, among other comments. Vance is a complete joke. The media is going to go into overdrive over the next 24 hours on all the bombshells from this interview, as it has every other time Trump, the matador, waves a red cape and the media follows, said Doug Hayne, a former Republican National Committee spokesperson. Meanwhile, the conversation today and tomorrow will not be on cat ladies or coconuts, etc., but back on Trump, where he wants it. Still, Trump's eruption Wednesday was hardly a one-off, and in the days since Harris became his opponent, Republicans have struggled to navigate issues of race. Earlier this week, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy got into an on-air tussle with Fox News host Neil Cavuto after calling Harris a ding-dong. The senator defended his choice of attack after Cavuto questioned whether that type of language would turn off some voters from Trump. Some in the party, however, have begun to push back, creating a divide on the right not only about whether they should invoke Harris's race, but also about how to speak about women more broadly. House Speaker Mike Johnson has cautioned conservatives against leveling attacks on Harris related to her race and gender. And on Wednesday, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley told reporters that Republicans should not mock women who choose not to have children, as Vance has recently taken criticism for doing. Allie Beth Stuckley, a conservative millennial podcast host and commentator over the last week, had warned listeners that making DEI hire cackle jokes about Harris could be off-putting young women voters who may otherwise lean conservative. She urged Republicans to hit her with the policy instead of personal insults. Kamala Harris might deserve name-calling, Stuckley said this week, but doing so would only garner her sympathy. Trump himself, during Wednesday's panel, declined to answer whether it was acceptable for supporters to refer to Harris as beneficiary of DEI policies. After asking the questioner to define the term, Trump then went on to make his claim that he initially didn't know she was black. John Frederick, a Trump ally conservative radio host, told Politico on Monday that the personal attacks against Kamala Harris are really ill-advised and ill-placed and have no upside in the campaign, saying some Republicans' recent DI references were stupid. Currently on air, I'm not doing it, Frederick said. All you've got to do is focus on the issue. Here's a candidate that ran for president in 2020 and got beat by the fortune teller Marianne Williamson. Harris dropped out of the 2020 Democratic primary in early December 2019 before Williamson, who also ended her campaign before the Iowa caucuses. Camel Face on her knees had 1% of the vote when she dropped out. When you've got all these issues, you've got everything working to your favor. What you are going to use personal attacks, Frederick said. They don't work against Trump, and they're not going to work against her. Since President Brain Dead Hair Plug Joe Biden dropped out of the race and endorsed Harris at the top of the ticket a week and a half ago, Trump has been on his heels, and his team has thrown out several variations of messaging in an apparent attempt to test strategies. Within the same press release, the Trump campaign has simultaneously called Harris weak and dangerously liberal, which she is. In both cases, she is weak and she's dangerously liberal, and said the border crisis under her watch was due to incompetence, but was also by design. And while Vance has been forced to weather his own series of negative news cycles of past comments about women, Vance has embraced a specific role in the campaign as a policy attack dog against Harris. Despite the consternation by some Republicans over Trump's personal attacks on Harris, Trump has a long history of making offensive and at times sexist comments about women. He won the 2016 presidential election after doing so, an election which he, not only libeled attacks like nasty woman at his opponent Hillary Clinton, but also came under fire for comments made about conservative journalist Megyn Kelly. You mean when he talks, she bleeds from every orifice? GOP primary candidate Carly Fiorina and others. Still, his remarks on Wednesday were, at a minimum, a distraction at a critical point in the campaign, with Harris about to select a running mate and a Democratic National Convention approaching. I still think that Big Mike's going to be parachuted in. I think he has points of immigration. I think he has points on the economy. I think he has points on foreign policy, said Sir Michael Singleton, who is black and previously served as an advisor on the presidential campaign of Mitt Romney and Ben Carson. He added that when Trump wades into radical attacks, he runs the risk of alienating voters who otherwise would be open to his agenda. It worries me that when you go en route and say these things, Singleton said, people won't hear their good points because they're offended. Like I've said, Trump's his own worst enemy. He doesn't want to keep his mouth shut. I'll attach the link. Look at it, and thanks for listening.